So during the war, this latest war, 2003 until now, there was specific targeting of Sur, and much of the seafront was destroyed. There's nothing there that was militarily. Why do you think the Zionists concentrated such much hate on Sur?
First of all, it goes back to the fact that it was the center of operation. So when most of the people actually, after the withdrawal and also before the withdrawal, were with the resistance, what happened is they wanted also, apart from the military logic, they wanted to punish the population. Here, the city of Tyre, it's a major economic hub. And if we draw a line between the fact that there is also a prohibition now on giving funds to the Lebanese government to actually rebuild and trying to besiege, preventing the Iranian planes from landing in Lebanon and so on, it's part of the same campaign. You want to destroy, but not also just destroy, but prevent them from rebuilding.
Hey everybody, this is Laith Marouf from Free Palestine TV. Before we continue with this video, I ask you to press the subscribe button on whatever social media platform you're watching this, and to go to our website freepalestine.video to donate so we can continue bringing you these field reports from Lebanon and Palestine. We are in the historic city of Sur, or Tyre in English, and we have with us a special guest today, Ali Jezzini, the Al-Mayadeen military analyst. Thank you, Ali, for being with us. Ali, you're from this region. We're going to do a tour of the old city's historical sites, the archaeological sites of Sur, talk about that a little bit, and at the same time talk about, of course, what has happened over the last 16 months in this city and its strategic importance. This is the first site we're visiting. It's the Roman columns right here, but Sur is much older than that. It has a history that goes back to the 4,700 years ago to 2,750 AD, BC, according to a lot of the archaeologists, which makes it one of the oldest cities on the world, definitely the oldest sports city in the world. Tell us a little bit about the history of Sur, starting from the Phoenician times.
Before we start, we have to say that this region in general, the Levant, has been one of the location where one of the earliest civilizations have been made, like since the Paleolithic, the Neolithic. But let's talk about like the more recent times, like say with the time where Sur was founded. It was founded by Semitic people, Canaanites. So the Phoenicians come later in this regard. The ruins that we see here are Roman ruins that date back to maybe like a few centuries before BC, a little bit more AD. It's very hard actually to find the ruins that of people that came before them, because most of the times the strategic locations that are in the city have been settled over and over again. So you'd find like Roman, ruins over Greek ruins, over Phoenician ruins, over Canaanite ruins. So
you can see that clearly from looking at these digs here, the layers of different stones, and clearly they've been built over and over.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing is, also Sur has been much smaller since it was in the past, because it was an island, basically, which was, I think, far about 200, 300 meters from the coast, which made it to have a strategic defensive position. From a military standpoint, it was a natural fortress, and it was a very important trade hub in the network of the Phoenician cities or the Canaanite cities that were on the Levantine coast. That made it important, and also being the location which a lot of the Phoenicians departed to the Mediterranean to found like great settlements, like which became Carthage and its empire.
Tunis and Algeria.
Yeah, they come from Sur here. Also, where they went and founded a few cities also in what is today Spain. So
just before we go there, just to for our viewers that are not from the region to understand, the Phoenicians didn't call themselves Phoenicians.
Yeah, they did not.
This is what the people outside the region called them. And those namings of Phoenician, Canaanite, Syrian, Assyrian, Ashurian, all of that are really the same people. But depending on who calls them what from outside there.
Exactly, it's what the Greeks have called them, and later on the Romans. So that's how the Punici, the Romans have called them. So that's
and
why
the name
it went
Sur
on. Yes,
is the origin for the word Syrian,
yep.
or Assyrian. So it's also the same people, again from the linguistic roots.
Exactly. It was a part of a big mega system of states, which for most of its times, actually, it was under the vassalage, let's say, of the Egyptian pharaohs. It was also in between, on the path of the clash, for instance, between the Hittites, in Asia Minor that were there, and the Egyptians, which controlled the southern Levant, and the Hittites controlled the northern Levant. That's why also wars have always happened here. It's a strategic location. We're talking about, of course, in the Bronze Age now. It went on to the Roman Age, and then like to the Middle Ages between the Islamic rule and the Byzantines that were in Asia Minor, then the Crusades, and so on until we arrive in this day. So it's just such an important trade route and has such an important strategic location. The thing is with the city itself, you see, it hasn't been that flourishing hub in all its periods of history. For instance, say on the let's call it the Canaanite time, the Phoenician time, what's called like that, it was the most important city on this coast. Then, when Alexander the Great came and tried to conquer the cities, the inhabitants of this region were allied with the Persians, so they refused to submit. He ended up destroying the city after building a bridge of course, because it was an island, building a land bridge from the coast to the city. Then the city started regrowing and becoming even wealthier in the Roman times. In the Islamic times, because later on we're talking about when the Muslims took the Levant, the city was a frontier city because there were always raids from here to there. So it lost importance to the foundation of like other cities, like Tripoli, like Akka, which is in Palestine. It's not very far from here. Till we arrived to the Crusader times, which it became at this time, because it has a significant Christian population, it became one of the main Crusader hubs. And also, for instance, when Salahuddin retook Al-Quds in the 12th century, the Crusaders, for example, retreated to Sur. That was one of the last fortresses they had, and where they organized from to actually relaunch the Third Crusade.
Yes, from here and from Akka in Palestine.
Later on, what happened is after the Mamluks took, after Salahuddin, retook the whole coast, the policy was, for example, was ruining the coastal cities, and even the walls and the fortifications, so they won't be used if the Crusaders come back. They tried taking it so much time. They even transported Tripoli, which is in the north, they transported a few kilometers inside. So the Crusaders, once they come, they can't like re-establish themselves. So the city lost importance. Again, we're talking again after it flourished and lost its importance, and then it lost. So we go on to Ottoman times. In the Ottoman times, the Ottoman conquest of Cyprus and Crete and the other islands made like a buffer zone. So the region here, the coastal cities of the Levant, actually managed to flourish a bit under the Ottomans, but Sur was still a ruined city with a few inhabitants, with inhabitants numbering around a few thousands. When we're talking about Sur in the ancient times, some estimates say that the inhabitants were between 100,000 and 200,000, even more at some points, because there was clusters of settlements also and cities on the coast, and then there was the island. So we call it maritime Sur and land Sur. It was always like that. It's still like that, but it's connected by a land bridge now. So to sum it up, the city arriving at this day started flourishing Also when it was a new trade hub, especially that, for instance, after the Ottoman Empire fell, never regained its previous importance, but like some of the trade that was going to Haifa, to the port of Haifa and Akka, was redirected here. But it was always part of the south of Lebanon when Lebanon was established by France. So it never actually recovered, because it was always southern Lebanon was a backwater area. No funds were being diverted from the state. The real, let's say, economic rise of Sur was actually with the economic rise of the Shia community, when they started emigrating due to the actual wars and the state neglection, in which we're talking about
and the forced recruitments into the Ottoman army.
Exactly. No, we're talking about like in the 1980s,
okay.
1990s, when people started emigrating and bringing money from Africa and the Americas.
There was the first wave of immigration during the famine, enforced famine by the Ottomans in the 1800s. And obviously there's the second wave with the occupation of the Israelis.
Here in the south, the main immigration happened later on. In the Ottoman times, it mostly was from the northern Lebanon and the the mountain area. But here, actually, you can see a lot of, like, say, if you look at this direction, it looks like a coastal line, thriving with shops and hotels and stuff like that. It was not due to any intervention of a Lebanese state. It was due to the people of the region themselves emigrating, bringing back money and investing into the city. So by Lebanese standards, it is considered a rich city, in the sense that it has a lot of economic movement. It is a clean, well-organized city, mostly we're talking about. But the thing is, its geopolitical location, it's still in the same location, around 25 kilometers, 20 kilometers from occupied Palestine. So it is still suffering, like it did suffer in the last war, from the Israeli bombardment.
We can see Ras al-Naqura from there.
Exactly.
With a tower on top there.
Yeah, that's Al-Bayada. From there, you have like 5 kilometers until the borders with occupied Palestine, the English, French established borders between Lebanon and occupied Palestine. And coincidentally, the region there is where the Israelis arrived during the last war.
We can see also from here, what is it called? Shama'.
Yeah.
Overlooking the city. And let's walk a little bit this way, and then we can maybe see a little bit further there, and we can start talking about the latest developments through this war. But before we do this jump, during the occupation in the 1980s up to the year 2000, there was this became a very important Zionist base of occupation, and there was a lot of resistance operations, including assassinations of big, officers in the Israeli military. Let's talk about why did the Israelis at that point do that, and how did the resistance deal with that reality?
Well, first, as an occupation army, occupation armies usually use the same tactics, in the sense that you find the city, you occupy it, because people from the cities usually are more wealthy. That's the line of thinking of settlers and colonial occupation. You base yourself in the cities because people in the cities have more to lose, because you can hurt them if they rebel, and they tend to let's call it, be more obedient. That's what they think. But the opposite happened, because if you establish yourself, for example, in the countryside, villagers tend to be usually more aggressive and clingy to their land. That's also part of what they call the anti-insurgency studies. The thing is, with Sur, they established a base that was on the eastern side of Sur, which was blown up by a resistance operation in 1982, one of the biggest operations against the Israeli forces, which more than 100 soldiers died. They blew up the whole center of the let's call it military governor of Tyre. There was a military governor, Israeli, since there was an occupation. The Israelis never actually admitted it was an operation till recently. They always said it was a gas leak and an explosion and so on. Then there was multiple operations along the lines that connect northern Palestine. You come to here at the entrance of Sur from the southern side, from Amaliyat, the school of al-Shajara, and so on. The Israelis didn't stay for long here in Tyre. They stayed in for like 3 years, and then they pulled out at the end. They couldn't take all the casualties they were taking from resistance operation. But the city, even when the Israelis actually retreated to what we call it, they call it the security belt, the city continued to suffer from bombardment, from the villages here continue to suffer from Israeli incursions every once in a while, especially that one of the biggest Israeli artillery posts was just situated on one of the hills there. So at any moment in time, when they want to just can load an artillery shell, either the Israelis or the Lahdis, the collaborator army, and just fire it at the city or anywhere, you know. They did it multiple times, even when like some operations were being conducted against the Israelis just out of retaliation. It was happening all over the front line. More so, let's say, in the Iqlim al-Tufah, but also here.
One thing that probably most of our viewers out there don't understand is actually Sur is a Shia majority city, and one of the funny things that we can note here is also the only city in Lebanon that you can drink alcohol on the public beach in, and it's a Shia city. You can't drink alcohol in Jbeil, a Christian city, on the beach. You can't drink alcohol in Beirut on the beach. You can't drink alcohol in Tarablos. But it is this Shia city that is tolerating of the customs of everybody, that allows people to...
Because it is mixed, of course, it is mixed. There is a good proportion of the people here who are Christian, and there are also Sunnis, and there are a Palestinian refugee camp, you know, in Sur. It's exactly right there. Al-Rashidiyya camp. And this happened basically gradually, but Sur in the last at least 4 to 5 centuries, it was Shia city. It was the majority of the population were Shia, and basically this dates back to when the Ottomans decided to give a feudal family of Al-Saghir, who are Shia, who are a famous Shia family here. They governed this city, and later on they gave birth to other families who also governed the city. For example, we remember the Sheikh Nasif al-Nassar and his brother. His brother used to govern this city also, and he used to be the governor of the other parts of South Lebanon, and there is a famous battle that maybe Ali can also talk about. But for now, this is important for us to know, because this is today, we can say that this is the last Muslim Shia city on the Mediterranean coast.
Yes.
You can, if you return to like maybe 7 to 8 centuries ago, the coastline was hosted many Shia cities, from Tartus and from also the coast, the Syrian coast, that still contain many Alawites until our days, until the Egyptian coast, and to other parts were also the Fatimites and the other eras, where it was also noticeable that many Shia cities were around the Mediterranean. This is the last one, and the Israelis, when they think about the city, they put this into consideration, that this is the last Shia city on the Mediterranean, and what affects the city affect the Shias who are basically right now, let's say, the source of all the resistance that is attacking the Israelis in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Iran.
Of course, that Netanyahu at the end of the day is actually saying, he contradicts the whole logic of the previous Israeli occupation governments, in the sense that they tried to fake being, let's call it liberals, and they have like a state mentality and so on. But the extreme right and the Israeli government at the moment wants to treat everyone like groups, like ethnic groups. So it's part of that community. So if you're bombing Sur, like you did in the last war, and like damaging the economic infrastructure, and not only, let's say, any military infrastructure if they found it, it's to punish the city inhabitants themselves for their choice in supporting the resistance. So that's also plays a major part, in the sense that al-Nabatiya, which was an internal city as well, got bombed in an economic sense, this economic destruction of the city. It's
Carpet bomb.
Carpet bomb. It's a major economic hub, which actually you need to impoverish the occupied to actually sway or to force certain political choices on them, like, say, normalization. It's for the refusal of this city. And going back to what you have said, for instance, Sur, once it was taken by al-Saghir and later by Nasif al-Nassar, it became a trade hub for the export of silk and other materials to Europe. And then later on, after Nasif al-Nassar, with the help of Zahir al-Umar in northern Palestine, rebelled against the Ottomans, they sent the Egyptian army with Ahmad Pasha Jazzar, the Wali of Akka, and destroyed the city and the surrounding villages, not only in a, let's say, military sense, but also in an economic way. Since then, let's call it, the city has been inhabited only by a few thousand of its Christian inhabitants and a few thousand of its Shia inhabitants. It's called the quartier now, they call the quartier of Sur, Harat Sur, and then the quartier, a quartier of Christians, the Harat al-Masihi. These are the two original quarters of Sur. Then the whole economic sense of the region, after this punishment, they lost a lot of like GDP accumulation, a lot of, let's say it, there's a lot of schools, and schools come actually with economic improvement. So the losing of this economic statehood or economic improvement and destruction of the cities and destruction of schools, and Shia schools we're talking about mainly, made this region a whole backwater region for, let's say, 200 years, almost 200 years, until the Islamic Revolution in Iran and until the arrival of Sayyid Musa Sadr, which actually started this whole, let's call it, new era. Especially,
revival of the city.
It actually coincided with, the inhabitants of the city and the people around emigrating and bringing money. So there was two levels of, let's call it, rise here, in the sense of intellectual, ideological way with the Islamic Revolution and Sayyid Musa Sadr, and then in an economic sense, after all the money came in from outside when people started emigrating.
This was one of the main avenues during the Roman occupation of the city.
What we saw actually, what was pretty interesting during our walk here is like as we said before, it's actually pretty mixed up. So it's really hard to differentiate between like ruins from the Greek era and the Roman era, because some of the writings were in Greek on the columns and some of them were in Latin. So it's a pretty long history that the city has went through. It is actually unfortunate. Most of the big buildings are hard to identify. We saw here some of the Roman systems for collecting waters earlier. Here it looks like it was more of a residential area or a market that was next to this avenue, this entrance to the, let's call it the maritime part of Sur. There's also one thing in Sur is that it's hardly, wherever you excavate, like to build a house or so on, you would find something. It's like Rome in a certain sense, or Damascus. Wherever you excavate, you'd find something. So this is just a small part of where people haven't really settled. I mean, modern people, us here, and then like stuff were found. But you can imagine how much stuff was also lost during the centuries for people even using the same stones that were already cut here to build their houses in the long, let's say 2,000 or 3,000 years here. So you'd use the same things. Like there is also an anecdote to where's the Roman hippodrome in the Roman, what you call it, theater that was in Tyre. Its stones were used also to repair, by Ahmed Pasha Jazzar, to repair the castle of Akka during Napoleon's invasion.
Ah,
yeah.
Well, you know, we can see still some of the water systems. Obviously, there's a well right there, and the water is being either brought in or out of the houses through these canals and aqueducts. And of course, some of these aqueducts actually go back all the way to the Canaanite, quote-unquote, Phoenician time, and they were just incorporated into the Greek and then Roman era and what happened after.
You needed to collect, since you're on an island, of course you need to collect the water from the, especially in times of siege,
and there was Ras Al Ain, what do you call it, well or a spring.
Yeah.
And there was a Canaanite Phoenician aqueduct that brings from Ras Al Ain into the island city, and that was part of what Alexander the Great, or Alexander the Macedonian, how he starved the city when he was besieging it, was cut the aqueduct. You can see this black volcanic rock that is used here in multiple occasions. And all of this is from either the Suwaida region and or the areas around Tabariya Lake and Jabal al-Sheikh, Qais in North Jordan, where this volcanic rock is very common because of the volcanic explosion there of what is now Tabariya Lake or the Sea of Galilee. So this has been shipped a long way to bring it here. So we're in the Al-Bas Sur archaeological site. It's the part of the fortified city that's not the island that we were in before it got the land bridge. And clearly this is the basements of these houses that were on the street level.
Yes. No, this is basically, at this point, we are actually in the cemetery where you can see like, so there's a lot of tombs. But the thing is that you can see that's interesting is the amount of work that has been put to tombs. So in the sense that how many man hours to fabricate one of these heavy tombs and like to move it. So it indicates when you see something like that, the amount of wealth that the earlier people of Tyre did have, since it was a merchant city. These date back to the Roman times. We can see a lot of Roman deity symbols here, also on the tombs themselves. And here we can see, of course, one of the most known monuments of Tyre city, which is the Arc of Triumph, the Roman Arc of Triumph, which is something you can see in a lot of Roman settlements and cities around the Mediterranean. There's a lot of, even in Tunisia, in Italy, for instance. It's just like the Romans, wherever they went, they transported their culture. And you can see like certain elements like the Hippodromo and the Roman Arc of Triumph, the same cemeteries. If we move a little bit forward, you can actually see there was like a marketplace, since it's not as intact as, let's say, the cemetery, but it's still there. You can see like the avenues of a marketplace and like some housing units here.
And this is the stone-led avenue in the middle.
Yep.
These stones are still, as we can see, survived thousands of years.
Yes. People actually think that Romans did actually walk on such stones. No, but they did give a lot of emphasis on fixing them. So they were like flat and like interconnected. So you wouldn't feel it. You would feel like it's more of an asphalt road. But of course, it became this level because of the, what you can see now, because of all the earthquakes and elements and so on. So we move now forward to the area of the marketplace that was here. You can see like it's like any avenue that you can find in normal cities. With
These are the storefronts.
Yeah, the storefronts basically. Of course, there was a roof earlier on, but it's not here anymore.
Yeah, a roofed avenue basically.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I was here. Maybe, let me remember, maybe like 10 years, yeah, 10 years. I did remember, like, I remember it differently. Even as a child, when they used to bring us, like, it's the #1 destination of the southern Lebanon, you know, school trips. You'd come to the ruins of Sur. It's, we actually made a joke earlier about it, because it's like when they just don't know where to take you, you know, as a school trip, just take you here, you know. It's just for the lazy.
Well, it's definitely better than the school trips in Canada.
Yeah, definitely.
Where they're going to take you to the mall or something.
Yeah. So this part here is actually around it. There was it has been bombed. You know, like some of the buildings were bombed on the outside. Here on the other side, we can see al-Aqsa Palestinian refugee camp, which is just there's basically a fence separating between this site and the other camp. If we go here, actually, there is another part of the separating part between the cemetery and the market area, which you can go to one of the most significant, or let's say present, Roman symbols. It's the Hippodromo, or the theater, like where the from Hippos, you know,
Hippodrome is like where the horse racing track.
Yeah, exactly, horse racing track. Actually, I think the Lebanese government did something a long time ago. I think it was in the 60s, where they actually did a reenactment. That was the last time. It was really funny, because if you look at it, none of the customs were actually accurate, neither the chariots. But I saw the video once. It's just like, let's just wear everything, you know, just a towel and pretend to be Roman. No, it's not like that. It's really funny. Yeah, but the actual, you know, seats, or this spot was continuous. You know, it wasn't just only this. It was all around. It was one of the biggest around the Mediterranean. You can see
bleachers.
Yeah, you can see a lot of it in also in Libya and Tunisia, and also there is one intact in Busra al-Sham, in southern Syria.
It is the most intact, what do you call it, Roman Colosseum, the one that's in Busra al-Sham. Busra al-Sham is a Colosseum, and that's basically like the one that is in Rome.
Yeah.
But it's the most intact one around the world.
Yeah, I think they used to call it Bostra, the Romans. Part of the Syria Palestinea province.
Yeah, you can see still some of the leftovers of the bleachers. And under them, clearly there was a walkway that goes all around.
Yeah. The Roman aqueduct system, I think. You can see it much clearer from here also.
Yes, this brought the water to the city from...
Continuously, yeah. If you can see, also the aqueduct system goes from there. There was an aqueduct system also. This is one part, second part, third part of the... as we were speaking before, there's this thing in the 18th century. Ahmad Pasha Jazzar, the Ottoman Wali of Akka, actually did use a lot of the stones that were here in Tyre to actually reconstruct the fortress of Akka to repel the Napoleon's invasion.
Yes, and that's where Napoleon lost the war in the Battle of
Yeah, and
Akka.
had to retreat after long siege, and then he had I don't remember the actual, there was a plague in his army. I don't actually remember the exact disease, but yeah, like he couldn't go on, and then he just decided to abandon his first civilizationary mission to the east he was going to do, and then yeah, he did pull out at the end.
Well, clearly the Lebanese, what we would call Lebanese today, have defended Palestine for a long time, including the siege of Akka by Napoleon. But many of our viewers wouldn't know this, that actually Napoleon was the first modern Western leader to come up with the idea of settling Palestine with Jewish Europeans, what we would call today as a Zionist ideology. He had the idea of, after occupying Egypt, that he would move all the Egyptian Coptic Christians from the south of Egypt, which the majority of the Copts are there, to the coastline in Alexandria, and then bring all these Jewish settlers from Europe into Palestine, and finally move all the Christians of Greater Syria into the coast of Lebanon and what is now Syria, so they can, as he said, have a buffer zone of Jewish and Christian Semites that are at war constantly with their brethrens, creating a buffer zone that will not allow war to spill into Europe, and also simultaneously waste all the resources and energy of the region in this eternal fight with itself.
It's exactly the same thing the French and the English did when they came and colonized here during the Mandate. They call it the Mandate, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. It's that when they tried to create an Alawite state, and then Lebanese Christian state, and then a Jewish state. So like complete buffer zone in which these will be always needing help from the Westerners, and there will be always that conflict, as you have already pointed out.
And that's exactly what they did. They just carried on Napoleon's plan.
Yeah.
But this is amazing. All these escargot snails covering these plants. It's unbelievable. I've never seen such amount of snails in one place.
Yeah.
So during the war, this latest war, 2003 until now, there was specific targeting of Sur, and much of the seafront was destroyed. There's nothing there that was militarily. Why do you think the Zionists concentrated such much hate on Sur?
First of all, it goes back to the fact that it was the center of operation, and even like a lot of other cities, let's say, or villages did suffer from terrible fates as a punishment, campaign. Since also Kfar was an important base for the collaborationist army, al-Khiyam as well, and the occupation army. So when most of the people actually, after the withdrawal, and also before the withdrawal, were with the resistance, what happened is they wanted also, apart from the military logic, they wanted to punish the population. Here, the city of Tyre, it's a major economic hub. And if we draw a line between the fact that there is also a prohibition now on giving funds to the Lebanese government to actually rebuild and trying to besiege, preventing the Iranian planes from landing in Lebanon and so on. It's part of the same campaign. You want to destroy, but not also just destroy, but prevent them from rebuilding, to cause strife against the Lebanese resistance. This way the population of this region, which is very loyal to the resistance, from resisting, because you couldn't do that in military means. It's just a punishment campaign also, like they are doing in Gaza, except in Gaza, they just want to eliminate all the reasons and foundations of a civilized life, Not even, they don't want tents anymore, they just want the people out. Here, we could have faced the same thing if there wasn't, if the resistance didn't actually stop them on Shama and on Al-Bayyada.
Let's go up there and see, because we can see from there actually those locations.
Yeah. So actually, the Israelis did reach a certain point, and they're still at a point now. One of the points they decided they don't want to withdraw. They're still occupying to this moment. It's Jabal Blat Mountain. So they can still overlook the cities. They did bomb it with artillery to save costs, because bombing with artillery is actually very much very more economical than actually using planes and so on, and then you can have a direct line of fire. So they actually, you see, that is Blat. That is the hill, with the radio tower on it. They can see us from here, basically, despite the fact that it's around 20 kilometers away. They wanted to take all that area. If they had managed to take it, and establish there, because some Merkava tanks were destroyed at the finale, let's call it, and hit around 13 to 14 were actually hit or destroyed in that area. You could see footage of burning wreckage. So the thing is, if they could have established a foothold, all this is plain, so they could just support the advancing troops with fire. Advancing to Sur,
you can do fire suppression lines.
Yeah, because we go back to the same logic also, that most of the destruction in the villages on the border didn't occur during the war, but did occur under the ceasefire. So imagine if they reached here and they actually made a ceasefire. Just build those, whatever they can build those, because it's much cheaper as well. So they would have tried actually to cause havoc on the city, cause as much economic damage as they can, so you cannot retrieve any economic activity or wealth until at least few decades. That is, so you would be in their heads, you would be just too busy rebuilding instead of just fighting them. Just to be a punitive campaign that doesn't actually belong in the timeline here. It's just like the Mongols, in the 13th century. That's a new way of action. Actually, it's not. They have tried for a long time to fake, especially to the Western world. They were the labor Zionists, or the leftist Zionists, were as bad as the extremist Zionists, but they had this complex, of trying to prove to the Westerners that now we're just like you, we're civilized. So they did so much effort in before bombing children, for instance, to have, let's say, a lawyer or an expert in the operations room to tell them that this is legit and this is not, to actually, be the civilized against the barbarian. But they don't care now. They just don't care. Okay, we're gonna bomb it. Why? Why are you doing this? No, we can't. So from one part, the damage is much greater, but from another part, you say off with the hypocrisy. We're finally above that.
Well, personally, I call them Crusaders, because they did exactly like what the Crusaders did. They cannibalized, they destroyed, they slaughter, and we have the other curse, the Wahhabi despots, which are the neo-Mongol horde, basically. Mercenaries bought off and doing the same thing as the Mongols did, level cities completely, enslave whole populations. So Bilad al-Sham today is living a deja vu of 1,000 years ago. That combo left hook, right hook of Crusaders and Mongols is now Crusaders and Wahhabis.
The only solution to this is actually to get rid of that occupation colony first. But how in history this region lived in peace? The only way is that a major power was protecting it, in the sense that the Mamluks in Egypt, or later on, for example, let's call it the Ottomans, but in the sense, because it was under their control, they still If you look at it from a nationalistic point of view, they're still an occupying foreign entity, but at least they did belong in the region. And also the Mamluks, or the Egyptian rule, as we spoke earlier, it comes back to the Canaanites and the so-called Phoenician times.
Yes,
you know,
it's the same culture.
yeah, it's the same. It's the same thing and the same culture. So this region specifically has been under the eyes of Europeans for a very, very, very long time. It's the doorway to the east, to the East Trade Network. So the only way to separate the forming of a greater entity that actually can protect the people and make them live like normal human beings, you know, was Egypt. So the foundation of the Israeli occupation was to separate Arabs, first and foremost, in a geopolitical sense. So that's why it seems after the normalization of Egypt that we are alone in this battle as Levantines in Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon, especially with what's been going on in Syria for the last decade. Going back to our subject here, the battle for this city would have been actually pretty terrifying and grim if they have managed to land here. Like, say, when they put the artillery battery exactly where they did put it before the withdrawal in the 2000, they bombed Al-Hosh, which is on to our east, right there, destroying a lot of buildings. Not even, it's not just you know, it's not just precision. It's just to cause chaos, to destroy, you know, apartments, shops, and so on, because that region there is known to actually be very pro-resistance, but as well to be a very wealthy region, you know, with a lot of shops and a lot of businesses and industries and so on. There's also the industrial zone, for instance, in the east of Sur, which is to that side, has been bombed, you know, extensively by the Israelis, also destroying shops and economic activity. So you see here, from a certain point of view, it's not just a war of you know, a military war in a certain sense. It's just an attrition war. It's just to destroy any economic activity. There was also one incident that actually supports the theory of the Israelis not actually wanting to do what they just proclaimed to do, like to clear, you know, the offensive capabilities of the resistance in that region, but also like to actually depopulate the city. When they bombed the water installation that was providing water to the whole region, and they also bombed the spare parts and they bombed the generator, so they just want to depopulate the city. They couldn't stand the fact that even inside the war there was still a lot of people living in this city refusing to leave, despite the fact that the north of Palestine was completely empty. They just can't stand this idea because it always reminds them that they don't belong here. And that's also why they waging a campaign on the border villages here to terrorize everyone, because their 90% of their settlers haven't returned, but people are trying to return. So the only way that you can equalize this is by attacking civilians, which do belong and have been here for thousands of years, unlike the settlers, which, with the help of all these tanks, artillery, and airplanes, still refuse to come back. They just don't want to. So there is no solution. This is the only way, like, to hide this, you know, psychological dilemma that they have as colonizers. We need everyone to escape, since our people escape, so they don't make us feel also different, you know, and not belonging in this region, because it's something there. Especially with what's happening, like yesterday, even the land, you know, with all the fires burning in occupied Palestine, they planted the land to hide the ethnically cleansed villages. They planted with European pines, and it all burned. Everything reminds them that they don't belong here. That's the point.
So today there was twice shelling from drones on Maisi Jebel area. What was the news from that?
It's basically part of the same policy the Israelis have been following for a long time, in the sense that people are not allowed, civilians or any resistance members, they're not allowed, their families are not allowed, no one is allowed to be there in that buffer zone. First of all, it's because they, as we spoke earlier, they don't want actually that scene of people returning from the other side, because people are trying to return since day one, but they actually fired at people, and even like I think it's more than 100 civilians that have been killed by the Israelis since the ceasefire. And second, because they see the population there as an extension of the resistance itself. So based on the new strategy, they see any existence of any population as a basis for any resistance action. As Mao has already said, the revolution swims within the populace as the fish swims within the sea. So it's part of that. And I think this will go on until the resistance is able to establish some sort of deterrence, although I do believe that the Israelis will also go on trying to kill people because it's part of the new strategy to actually prevent the formation of any capability, no matter what the proclaimed intention of the other party is. So no populace, no capabilities, no whatsoever. So that's a personal opinion. It can be wrong, but I think that Israel will not submit to any new deterrence until it breaks it completely. So there will be no middle ground from now on.
Let's go up a little bit so you don't get wet on my behalf. But there was those two raids today on Maiz Jabal. One of them hit a scooter with two Syrian workers, but they managed to jump off and survive. And the other was on a pickup truck, and we know there was a martyr there, and one of the medics that came to help him also got martyred. And one last thing we can talk about before we close up, there was an article in al-Akhbar newspaper written by the editor-in-chief Ibrahim al-Amin about his predictions for the near future. What was in this article, and how controversial is it?
Well, basically, what Ibrahim al-Amin was trying to say is that there is a high possibility of an Israeli war that could happen in the next period against Lebanon. First, because of the strategic change that happened for the fall of the pro-resistance Syrian government. And second of all, because the Israelis are signaling that they failed to actually prevent resistance from rebuilding its strengths through the intelligence and the air force that they already have, which proves the same resistance. No wars can be won by air. So Netanyahu is, first of all, because of his internal problems, any end of this war means of his end to his political career. So we'd have to always continue in a cycle of escalation, like a snake eating itself. And second, because it's part of the new strategy, they will not, as I said, they will not allow any capabilities to develop. And if they didn't see that they can prevent this capability from building up, they will try everything to actually launch war or to lure the resistance. And third, because Netanyahu's government and the Zionists and the US administration might not seem to be very happy about what's going on with the negotiations with the Iranians, because Trump might give a lot to the Iranians just to finish, to make a truce here in the Middle East and go and face China. So there is some certain possibility, but at the end of the day, you see, the Israeli society is not quite ready to go in another war, since more than 10,000 reservists refused to come, and you need actual existential pretext to push this society. So 70% of the polls in the Israeli occupation say that they want to end the war on Gaza and retrieve the captives there. It's not because only they want the captives, but because their society is actually tired. Half of the reservists aren't showing in certain divisions in the army. So pushing for another existential war, which will be existential for us here in Lebanon, against Lebanon, might not find a lot of support, especially with the numbers that you need to recruit to occupy such territory as Lebanon. And also you'd need, despite the fact that they flip the whole world with what they're doing, they will still actually need some kind of international pretext to launch an attack. And they use the support operations that the resistance was doing here from Lebanon against the Israeli occupation to say that, okay, we did nothing, we were being attacked. But here to launch, while even the legitimate authorities of the country, like the president, is saying that the resistance is collaborating and we have total commitment to the ceasefire, like out of the blue, is just really not very visible in the short term. But like if you see it from a certain utilitarian, pragmatic point of view, that would make a lot of sense. But if you see it from another point of view, with the troubles he have, like the Israelis have on the home front, and you need international backing, and it's actually a thing, because during a lot of leaks, Netanyahu did say that, hint that he's concerned about international backing. It is a factor. I'm not saying it's the only factor.
Yeah.
It plays a factor. So it's quite a tedious subject. I'm sure the resistance will be then ready to meet him, but there's no definite answer to that at the moment.
Well,
we can never be sure.
I think we've done a complete tour of Sur. Yeah. We've seen so much. I don't think anybody has filmed so much of Sur. Look at this beautiful pink sky, sunset that's happening.
To the north.
Ali Jezzini, thank you very much for being with us. Hopefully we'll have you at least twice a month from the field here with all your information, all your knowledge of the location. You're still watching Free Palestine TV. This is Laith Marouf. Please press the subscribe button on whatever social media you're watching this on, and go to our website, freepalestine.video, to donate so we can continue bringing you this content from the field in Lebanon, in Palestine. And until we see you next time, we bid you all a free Palestine.